Downstairs truck, downstairs truck. Yes. I would recommend sitting up here, but if you'd like, you can sit down. Good evening. I'd like to call the Village Board meeting for November 2nd, 2021 to order. If the clerk could please take the roll.
Trustee Ayani.
Present.
Trustee Gabanis.
Present.
Trustee Leahy.
Here.
Trustee Linsner.
Here.
Trustee Maderas.
Here.
Trustee Powers.
Here.
Good evening, everyone. Tonight, myself and the Village Board will be deliberating on one issue: Haymarket's request for a planned development by special use in the B2 zoning district. Throughout this evening, I ask that each of you conduct yourselves in a manner appropriate for a legislative forum. Please refrain from talking at all times during the meeting, and if you have to leave during the meeting, we ask that you do so quickly and quietly so that we do not disrupt the proceedings. Now we'll begin, as we do every meeting, with the Pledge of Allegiance. Okay, now it is now time for audience participation, but public comment on tonight's petition has closed. So if there's anyone in the audience who would like to make a comment on any other issue, please approach the podium now. Okay, before the board begins its deliberations tonight, I have some comments that I would like to make. Reasonable. The definition of reasonable is fair, sensible. That is what the village of Itasca was asked to consider. If Haymarket operating in Itasca is reasonable. I'm a lifelong resident of Itasca, and I've had the privilege of serving as village president since 2009. As the village president, with a dedicated staff and village board, my number one focus is that we do everything we can for the betterment of our residents. We're a village that's compassionate, a village that gives. We help where we can. Itasca is a small town. We represent 1.03% of the total population of DuPage County. Yet, as a small town, we have a big heart. Our Itasca Cares collaboration is our way of lending a helping hand. Our outreach team helps people get back on feet. No one wants to believe there's a hunger problem in their community, but our Itasca food pantry is a necessity. And unfortunately, COVID created a closure to our Itasca homeless shelter. But it's what the community needed pre-pandemic. When we first heard about Haymarket looking to come to Itasca, there were only two words that came to my mind: Itasca Cares. Others and I were open to the idea of a facility because, make no mistake, treatment centers are needed in and around DuPage County. We had many discussions and meetings to figure out the size and scope of a potential Haymarket facility and how this would work in one of the smallest villages in northern Illinois. My number one concern, as I stated earlier, is our residents. Current residents and future residents, which is what those living at Haymarket would become. They would become Itasca residents. As village president, I have to ensure our village's functionality and fiscal responsibilities go hand in hand. As many of you know, I am a certified public accountant. I account for money. Fiscal responsibility is what I do, and it carries over into my role as village president. As time went on, we learned more and more about the immense size and scope of Haymarket's plan. And I kept coming back to one question. How could Itasca reasonably handle a facility like this? During the Plan Commission meetings, one of the biggest items to be discussed was 911 calls for service. At various times during these meetings, Haymarket presented different forecasted calls for service. The bottom line is, the forecasting is more than what our fire district can handle now with our one ALS ambulance. Haymarket suggested they could provide a second ambulance, but that would also require staff, maintenance, and other costs Itasca just doesn't have. And for the record, I, as village president, cannot just reject the offer of an ambulance, as was suggested in the testimony. That decision must be made by the fire district. I do not have that authority. Itasca is tax capped. According to state law, we do not have the ability to just raise taxes. If we required extra operating funds to pay for the service of a gifted ambulance, we would have to go to our residents and ask for an increase in taxes to pay for it. That is not reasonable. Early on, it was clear the potential financial burden of Haymarket would be heavy on Itasca. Representative Deb Conroy suggested the state could provide a grant to help the financial burden. But several things are important to point out. When that offer was made, it was very early in the process, and we did not have critical data and information from Haymarket on true potential costs. And what is promised today is not guaranteed tomorrow. Itasca has been the victim once before of being awarded a grant, and then suddenly the funding went away. We cannot count on unknown dollars. That does not make good fiscal sense. It was clear to state elected officials, county elected officials, and local officials that one of the smallest communities was going to have to absorb 100% of the cost, risk, and burden of servicing a facility that would be accepting residents beyond Itasca. More importantly, it was also clear to Haymarket that costs went beyond Itasca means. On November 13th, 2019, the Plan Commission chairman asked Dr. Lustig, and I quote, "So I'm also concerned that our police and fire services may not be available to existing Itasca residents and businesses and those of other communities where we have intergovernmental agreements. My second bottom line financial question is, if the Itasca Fire or Police Department finds it necessary to increase personnel and/or equipment because of an increase in calls caused by Haymarket, would Haymarket be willing to pay for the added personnel and equipment as long as they're being served here?" Dr. Lustig's response, "No, it would not." To the residents of Itasca, I say to you this evening as your village president, Haymarket's request on our village is unreasonable. Now I call on Community Development Chairperson Trustee Dino Gavanis to open the deliberations.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Good evening. Tonight, the Village Board will discuss and act on PC 19-014, request for a plan development by special use with exceptions, and a Class 1 site plan to allow a mixed-use residential and healthcare facility and other accessory uses in the B2 Community Business District for Haymarket DuPage LLC at 860 West Irving Park Road, Itasca, and ordinance number 1992-21A or B. Before we begin, however, I would like to turn this over for a few moments to Village Administrator Ergo to describe the two ordinances for consideration before you now.
Thank you, Trustee Gavanis. While the Plan Commission has recommended denial of Haymarket's petition, tonight the Village Board can choose to either affirm the Plan Commission's recommendation and deny Haymarket's petition, or reject the Plan Commission's recommendation and approve Haymarket's petition. The two ordinances before you reflect these choices. The first ordinance, 1992-21A, approves Haymarket's DuPage's request for a plan development by special use with exceptions and Class 1 site plan review. Because this ordinance would effectively overturn the Plan Commission's recommendation, approval of this ordinance would require an affirmative vote of a supermajority of village trustees, or 4 trustee yes votes. The second ordinance, 1992-21B, denies Haymarket DuPage's request for a plan development by special use with exceptions and Class 1 site plan review. The ordinance affirms Plan Commission's recommendation to deny Haymarket's petition. Therefore, only a simple majority or 4 yes votes of the Village Board would be necessary to pass this ordinance. The board may choose to offer amendments to either ordinance this evening through the normal amendment procedures. Once the board passes one of the ordinances, the remaining ordinance does not require consideration. Trustee Gavanis, I now turn it back to you for deliberations.
Thank you, Carrie Ann. I will begin by making a motion for the second ordinance, 1992-21B. An ordinance denying a plan development by special use with exceptions and Class 1 site plan review.
There is a motion. Is there a second? Second. There is a motion and a second. Are there any questions or statements that any of the trustees want to make?
At this time, the trustees are requested to see if they would like to make a comment.
Yes.
Trustee Leahy?
Thank you. I would like everyone to know that this decision did not come easily. So many precious lives have been lost and families destroyed due to drug and alcohol abuse and overdose. Every single death is a tragic loss for all of us, and I do not take that lightly. I know that substance abuse knows no bounds, no socioeconomic distinction, nor any other. I have listened to all the testimony and heard every word, as well as the pleas for help. That is what makes this decision so difficult. Haymarket is asking the Village of Itasca to support a 240-bed facility that will serve the entire county of DuPage as well as the collar counties. 240 beds is 2/3 the number of beds that Alexian Brothers Hospital in Elk Grove Village has. Itasca is the second smallest town in DuPage County with a population of 9,500 people and 1 ambulance. We are a town whose residential property taxes don't even cover the cost of our police department. The Village of Itasca is being asked to support a 200-bed facility that could potentially cost Itasca and its residents $1 million annually. I believe it is the responsibility of every single one of us to help fight the war on drugs and alcoholism in our towns, our state, our counties, our country. Yet it doesn't appear that others are willing to do their part. The Village of Itasca, nor the Itasca Fire Protection District, has ever received a financial commitment from the state of Illinois to help support Haymarket. The Village of Itasca, nor the Itasca Fire Prevention District has ever received a financial commitment from DuPage County and the nearly 1 million people it serves to help support Haymarket annually. The Village of Itasca, nor the Itasca Fire Prevention District, has ever received a valid annual financial commitment from Haymarket, nor an offer of compromise for a smaller facility that could potentially work in Itasca. I am of the belief that emergency medical services for residents, including Haymarket, if they were to come to Itasca, would be severely compromised. A facility this large belongs at the county seat or affiliated with a hospital where appropriate emergency medical services can be provided. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Trustee Leahy. Any other?
Trustees, any other comments?
We have a motion and a second. Could you do a roll call, please?
Trustee Gavanis?
Yes.
Trustee Leahy?
4.
Trustee Linsner?
4.
Trustee Maderas?
4.
Trustee Powers?
4.
Trustee Ayani?
4. Okay. Ordinance 1992-21 has been adopted. This ordinance does uphold the Plan Commission recommendation denying a plan development by special use with exceptions and a Class 1 site plan review. There's nothing else to come before the village board. I would ask for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
There is a motion and a second. Roll call, please.
Trustee Leahy?
4.
Trustee Linsner?
4.
Trustee Maderas?
4.
Trustee Powers?
4.
Trustee Ayani?
4.
Trustee Gavanis?
4.
Okay, we are adjourned. Thank you all for coming this evening.